करप्ट हैं और ये है वो है.
Yes, sir.
See, every country has its own trajectory. What helped Turkey put their military in the box was their desire to join the European Union, which is still there. And in order to do that, they had to bring in a lot of changes in terms of European standards, human rights, and democracy and free elections and everything else. They had to do it. They did it because they wanted to join the European Union, and that application is still pending. Indonesia was different. You know, Indonesia was on the verge of becoming a communist country under Sukarno. It was the largest communist party in the world at that time in terms of membership. And the United States undertook a very covert operation to destroy that party. And what the United States helped build afterwards was a democracy, because without that, it would have slumped back into a situation where the Communist Party would have revived the United States. If I may take 1 minute to say that all the social welfare structures of European states came after 1919. 1917 was the Bolshevik Revolution. France and England launched a counter-revolution, which is called the White Revolution, which failed, and the Soviets consolidated their power. And Western Europe was afraid that the communist parties in our countries, there were very strong communist parties in all these countries, would triumph. So they thought, well, we have to give something to the people. And it is very interesting that the ILO was formed in 1920, immediately after the failure of the White Revolution. And then came all the legislation. You can go and check. All the welfare legislation in European countries came after 1920. The United States has never had, if the communist revolution in Afghanistan had succeeded, the United States would have made sure that socio-political changes take place in Pakistan so that we don't go communist. Instead, that didn't happen. So all the traditional power structures in Pakistan, whether it's the feudals, whether it's the robber baron industrialists, whether it's the generals, the United States has consolidated that, because they use Pakistan for their dirty jobs anywhere else or abroad. Your earlier question was relationship to the external world. So this is where Pakistan is. From British colonialism, we have merely moved into cantonment colonialism, where all the traditional power structures, even at the village level, continues to exist. Nothing has changed. You know.
So where do you see the hope, the opportunity for change?
For this audience to rise, to become alert. When we were students, when I was a student in the 1970s, we didn't have internet or anything. We didn't even have laptops or computers. We were very active. We had our own political party, which was called the Liberals. We would collect some money, 1 rupee here, 4 annas there. We would go to Burns Road, because that's where all the printing industry was. We would get a few pamphlets printed, sometimes 100, sometimes 200, depending on how much money we have. Then we would stand at Regal Cinema and distribute those pamphlets. We even protested against the Vietnam War, जिसका हमारा कोई ताल्लुक नहीं था. Today's generation of students don't protest about anything. And all they have to do is open their laptop, pick up their mouse, and give their opinion. That's what all of you can do. Make sure you are heard. Let there be 1 million voices to protest whatever matters to you. As long as we are apathetic, we don't care what happens outside our own bungalows in Defense and Clifton, then nothing will happen. So the biggest problem in this country is the apathy of the elite. We have to rise.
Ali Raza, how do you think that will change? Where do you see the hope?
No, well, I'm an optimist, so I still feel that there are these a lot of success stories which go on, and there are a lot of, say, for example, NGOs. They're doing amazing work, starting off from microfinancing to education. I mean, there are a lot of these success stories we have, and I believe that, I mean, if we are able to develop that consensus, my question actually I wanted to ask Dr. Nafisa was that since we have kind of evolved, are we evolving in the right direction or not? Because I am somebody who still believes that instead of blatant martial laws, now they are essentially somewhere at the back end. You know? So the question is that are we in the right direction of this evolution or not? So I mean, I believe that yes, we are. Maybe Dr. Bengali can comment on this, and Dr. Nafisa can.
Yeah, before that, I again taking forward Kesar's, like, what needs to be done, and you said people have to rise. I think that implies that you have to, have that confrontationist mode. We've done that. Like, as a political worker, we've done that. It doesn't really work. I think what is important to have a moral compass around which you rally. And unfortunately, because of this whole populist agenda, people are rallying around a person and not principles. And I think that we have to look at, for me, I draw strength in Constitution. So the Constitution of Pakistan is what our moral compass should be, and not, a particular persona that we emulate or want, that our entire moral world is around that particular persona, which is what, and of course I'm hinting at Imran Khan right now, that, a lot of people in Pakistan thinks that he is the end all and be all of leadership, the kind of words that I see even in the social media. And I think that there has to be a dispassionate, look at and see it in a perspective, and perhaps make, where there are violations of Constitution, whether our government does it or anybody from the opposition, this is where the protest or the rising up has to be on the Constitution. That is where the citizens, I think, or the civil rights issues come up. The other thing that I think, why I think the way politics needs to change is, until Benazir Bhutto, the voters were not voting on parochial lines, or there wasn't a provincial context. Unfortunately, now in politics, it's become so divisive, and I think really we need to come together around that issue, that we have to have a whole of Pakistan approach. We have to have a whole of Pakistan approach. We cannot, because if something happens, say in my district, Khairpur was underwater for how many, 2 months because of the floods, and half of Khairpur came out and sought refuge in Karachi. So the urban collapse is because of uneven approaches to development, even with the resources. I mean, Kesar is an expert, and he would bear me out that the way NFC is being distributed, even now at the federal level, is skewed against smaller provinces. It's skewed against women. It's skewed against minorities. So we have to have that, whole of Pakistan approach when we are looking at, and this is something that I also say on the floor of the House. So the way politics, the politics has to change, and I think the citizens have to look at principles in the Constitution and not personas. People will come and go, but the Constitution will remain.
So what I'm hearing from this esteemed panel is that clearly we need to awaken the people of Pakistan, right, to their rights, to their responsibilities. We need to educate our people. That has to be the primary way forward.
We have
And-
to be awake. I think the people are awake.
No, but
I personally think, I look at my voters and I think people are a step ahead of where we are.
sure. And this is where I feel that the technology revolution, the AI revolution will play a big role in terms of empowering people and leveraging. Already the communication revolution has empowered people in ways that we've never seen before. The dynamics of politics have changed dramatically, and they're changing very fast. And power will also shift now, because from these robber barons, like we mentioned, or elite capture, the empowerment of individuals will shift power. It's happened in other economies. In India, it's starting to happen in other economies as well. I think that's where the real opportunity lies. With that note, I'm just going to make sure that we have time for questions. The first question is for Mr. Bengali. How can Pakistan leverage its economic strengths to attract global investors in an increasingly competitive landscape?
Any business, whether it's national, international, local, it depends on the key is sanctity of contracts. If I am running a small shop in a village and I buy some goods on credit from the city, I am under obligation to pay on time and whatever the conditions were. If I don't, I've broken my contract. I can't do business. Pakistan is singularly notorious in the world today for breaking contracts. We broke the contract with Ricodic. We are in the process of breaking contracts today as we speak in terms of forcing revisions of contracts with IPPs. The fact that there are no bidders for PIA, and even those who had been shortlisted did not bid, it tells you that no one wants to trust the government of Pakistan, whichever government, because they don't know. They will come here, invest money, set up something, and midstream you will change the terms of the agreement. So the first thing to do is to make sure that you keep your word. In sanctity of contracts, that is very important. As I said at the beginning, Pakistan is a resource-rich country. Even if you create the space for Pakistani entrepreneurs, they will come forward. And while I generally say that Pakistani entrepreneurs are mostly shopkeepers who have no agenda beyond 6 months, yet I have come across almost 24 entrepreneurs in Pakistan who are genuinely entrepreneurs, who would take risks, create new opportunities, invest, and get something out positive. They've done it. The problem is that our whole macroeconomic structure is geared to creating a casino economy. It is geared to allow the stock market players and the property market players and the importers to flourish. And import is all about under-invoicing. We've created a macroeconomic infrastructure. We can change that. It can be changed overnight. And once you do that, once you block investment funds going into stock market, going into the property market, which are non-productive investments, because you're not creating any assets, you're not creating any wealth. It's speculation, satyabazi hai. That's how money is made. So then money will, and you create the conditions for industrialization, then investment will flow into industries. When Pakistanis invest, foreigners will also invest. China started its development on the basis of FDI. But the FDI that came into China was in manufacturing for export. The FDI that has come into Pakistan in the last 25 years is all into service industries. All these industries earn their revenues in rupees, convert their profits into dollars and send it out. There is no export. So FDI for Pakistan has become a drain. It is not a positive. It's become a window for outflow of capital, of foreign exchange. We are not earning foreign exchange. So this has to change. The macroeconomic structure has to change. The casino economy has to close. We have to block funds moving into the stock market and the property market, import under invoicing, and these are all doable things. It's not rocket science. Once industrialization starts, in fact, industrialization will increase government revenues. The government will not have to use this. Tax structure has become a bhatta structure now because the government is making all kinds of threats to get tax out of us. They won't have to do that because as the industrial base expands, the tax base expands, exports expands, employment expands, and once you have jobs, people will not go into insurgency. If you travel, if you haven't done it, I ask you to go by road from Zob to Peshawar. There is nothing. There is no economic activity. What do you expect those people to do when some terrorist comes and says, here, take this gun, we'll give you 500 rupees a day? This is the only option he has left. I've served in Afghanistan. I can tell you I've served in Afghanistan, but I've also served in Balochistan. The Balochistan insurgency can be over in 1 year.
That's hopeful.
Yeah.
Good.
It's doable. So all these things are doable. And with a country that is so resource rich, one can only be sad that we are in this state of affairs, but it's all doable. We can do it. We can, instead of begging for aid all the time, we can give aid to other countries. The population of India that is on the streets is equal to the population of Pakistan. We can give aid to that street-dwelling population of India.
Got it. So, for Ms. Shah, as a lawmaker, why do you think implementation of our legislation is flawed despite knowing the problems and their respective solutions?
Okay. It's a very important question. Today in the parliament, what is missing is, now this is speaking technically as a legislator. What is missing is post-legislative scrutiny. In the world over, every parliament has committees that actually look at the executive and monitor how the law is being implemented. And some of them even undertake field visits. Say the law on compulsory education, if there is law, is it being implemented in the way it is envisioned in the law? So it's actually the legislators follow this through till the end. In Pakistan, unfortunately, till now, we do not have a provision for post-legislative scrutiny. I have moved it in the parliament. It is in some committee. I hope that once that in the Senate there is, but in the National Assembly there isn't. So this is one way, of course, that we follow through. This is a gap as far as the parliament is concerned. And of course, the executive, if there is no watch, each of us, there's this whole debate on the 26th amendment. Let me bring it up as well. It is very important that each organ of the state is being watched over by some other organ. Otherwise, there'll be tyranny. So if the executive follows a populist agenda, there's a fear of fascism. If the parliament is a rubber stamp of the executive, then again there is fascism. If the judiciary feels it has the power to dismiss an elected prime minister, then that again is a problem. So we need to have this balance. And so if the executive is not following through a certain legislation, that could be a problem with the legislation, it could be a problem with resources, it could be a problem of the will of the executive. So the legislator has to follow it through. And of course, your judiciary will then have to have the oversight. And one of the reasons why we did the 26th Amendment is to protect the executive from these frequent onslaughts. And there could be a debate on whether, certain provisions may have done differently, but law is a work in progress. So it is important that there are checks and balances, and each organ of the state is checking the other in a very nuanced way. And so with respect to legislation, it is important that I hope that there has to be a change in the parliamentary rules. There are two very important books. One is the Constitution, and the second is our own Constitution of the Assembly, which is the Rules of Procedure. So if the rules of procedure are empowered to allow the Parliament to look at post-legislative scrutiny, we can actually chase the law as well.
Thank you. Next question is for Mr. Raza. What are some innovative methods that can help Pakistan navigate the challenges posed by the global economic shifts and ensure sustainable growth?
So, one of the things that I feel that we essentially lack with our political governments and everything has been that we don't think long term. Unfortunately, with every change in the government, there's a new policy, and they keep changing the goalposts every now and then. Interestingly, I was sitting with at one of the meeting with the Chief Minister, Punjab, and there was a bilateral donor that was trying to come up with some programs for education. So the first question I asked them was that I'm sure with every new Chief Minister you come with the same kind of protocol and everything. So I would rather be interested in knowing what has been happening in the past. What has happened to those projects? So they had no answer. And unfortunately, when and if these donors, bilateral, multilateral, whatever projects they bring to Pakistan, there's a donor-driven agenda to them. I mean, it's not really looking at our ground realities. It's coming up with what they want to, sell to Pakistan. So I think we need to have an indigenous model where we need to create what our needs are. And the donors, whatever funding is coming, it has to be long-term and it has to be aligned with what we require. I think that's really where the gap is. So in my experience of working in the development sector, I've always seen that it's always donor-driven, and we are not really, we don't really have a say in there. So I think we need to have a self-reliant model. We have to think about what our requirements are, what our needs are, and we need to start dictating those rather than taking that dictation.
Thank you. So I'll give you guys 30 seconds each. Just give your final comments. You can start with Kesar.
मैं उर्दू में कहता हूँ, खामोश बैठेंगे तो फिर जिसके हाथ में बागडोर है वो अपनी मर्जी की चलाएगा. हमें अपनी आवाज़ उठानी है, हमने बगावत करनी है. बगावत का मतलब गाड़ियां जलाना और पत्थर मारना सिर्फ नहीं है. बगावत का मतलब सोच से है. जितनी भी तरक्की दुनिया ने की है साइंस में, टेक्नोलॉजी में, मेडिसिन में, इसलिए कि somebody thought this path is not right, there is another way to do it. वो आइडियाज से जो बगावत करते हैं वहां से तरक्की होती है. हम सबको बगावत करनी पड़ेगी.
नफीसा.
मैंने तो बहुत सारी कंक्लूजन्स पहले ही दे दी थी, लेकिन मैं सिर्फ ये कहूँगी कि आई थिंक एक और डायमेंशन है जो मुझे पहले बात करनी चाहिए थी. वो ये है कि पाकिस्तान अनफॉर्चुनेटली परहैप्स these frequent military interruptions and all that, हमारी सिविल सोसाइटी का स्पेस which is who I'm addressing today इतना श्रिंक हो गया है that वो लेवरेजिंग जो स्टफ है सिटीजनरी का, its power is always articulated by the civil society. So the civil society we all have to develop this common social consciousness. And then this power of association सिर्फ political parties का prerogative नहीं है. मैं नेपाल में गई हूँ, वहाँ farmers association हजारों हैं, trade unions हजारों हैं. इंडिया में trade unions, farmers associations. पाकिस्तान में membership based organization कौन सी है? Can you think of anyone? वहाँ एक ट्रेड यूनियन की 2-2, 3-3, 4-4 लाख होती हैं, and they are actual trade unions. So I think the power of association is what the Constitution has guaranteed to the citizens, And this power of association need not just be in the political space. It can be in the education space. Could be in the field of AI. It could be the farmers, you know. So I think the power, this is what the citizens have to, ये जो आपने revolution की बात की, I would approach it in a different way, but I would say, yes, we need to have citizens associations and pressure groups कि हम जैसे लोग फिर, you know, हम जैसे लोग, which I always say कि politicians, you are a step ahead of us, तो आप फिर हमें, you know, you'll empower us to take those kind of decisions that are in the interest of the people of Pakistan and in the national interest.
Thank you. Ali Raza?
I totally agree with Dr. Bengali Saab that I think वो जो जिस बगावत की बात करें, that's brewing. And that is precisely why I said I'm the optimist who believes that we are in that evolution which is heading in the right direction.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been a great panel and really enjoyed the conversation. I think the way I would frame it is that we need to awaken, right? We need to take responsibility for our country, and we have the power to bring about the shift. Until the people rise up in terms of empowering themselves, change will not happen. It's time for us to wake up as a nation. We've gone through hell and back, and it's now time to find our own strength and own power. Every nation takes time. I think we're coming towards our first 100 years. In 2047, we will be 100 years old. It's time that we rise. We have the potential to be a great nation, and inshallah we will be. Thank you.